How's it going, everybody? It's Pilot Flame, and we are back with another FPL video. And this week, it is PEP Roulette time, Game Week 26. We're going to be taking a look at what we think Pep Guardiola is going to put out team selection-wise for a Game Week 26. I'll be giving my thoughts on both fixtures versus West Ham and Wolves. We'll be taking a look at what he did in midweek, as well as what he did for the previous fixture in the Premier League versus Arsenal. We'll talk about three key players, which I think could be important to his team selection for at least this week coming. And then kind of give my overall thoughts of, some of the players that could potentially be involved. Because there are some players that have been on the fringes a little bit, slowly returning back to form. And they are crucial players for Pep Guardiola's Manchester City and their title run, as well as their surge for European glory. If you haven't done so already, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. And also make sure to give us a follow over on Twitter so that you can keep up to date with all the posts that we do over there, as well as a follow over on Twitch. That's where we'll be doing all of our FPL live streams for the season. We do have a deadline stream on Saturday, 1 hour before the deadline at 5 a.m. EST start time. So make sure to come check us out live over on Twitch for that. It's PilotFlame226. Link is in the description, and we also leave a pinned comment down below on every video to show you when the next live streams will be. So without further ado, let's see how Pep Guardiola lined up in Game Week 25. So this is the team that Pep put out in their 1-0 victory. I almost said defeat, because they scored so early and didn't remember any of the goals, really. It was just Sterling's header, which was very, very poor defending from Arsenal. And then after that, City pretty much controlled the game, didn't really get out of first gear, and it was kind of pretty City-esque in terms of they just kind of knocked the ball around. Arsenal really didn't look like they were attacking too much, had a half chance here or there. But overall, City were quite comfortable. Could have easily scored more had Arsenal equalized, and I think they were just pretty comfortable in the game. This is the lineup that Pep put out, so pretty standard at the back. Ederson, Cancelo, Stones, Diaz, and Zinchenko. These five have been pretty staple in his recent lineups. Rodri and Gundogan make their reappearance, as well as Bernardo Silva, somebody who has been getting 90 minutes consistently in the Premier League on back-to-back-to-back game week basis. He went with a kind of false nine position, which De Bruyne took up mostly when they were kind of in possession, as well as out of possession at times. Riyad Mahrez held the width on the right, and Sterling was out on the left. And the only sub that was made in the game was actually Gabriel Jesus. Aguero was available for the game. Ferran Torres was available. Laporte was available. But he only ended up needing to make one substitution. And I thought De Bruyne, it was pretty much kind of set in stone. He was going to play probably 60 minutes because, he was definitely fit and available because Pep said that in his press conference. And he was probably only going to end up playing 60, 70 minutes and was probably going to get hooked for somebody in the game. But overall, City were quite controlling. Again, in terms of an FPL point of view, double City defense still looks on the cards. Diaz will probably play 9 out of 10 games in the Premier League on a stretch of games, and Cancelo will probably play 8 out of 10. Stones probably similarly. Zinchenko probably similarly. Whereas I think Gundogan and De Bruyne, when they're fit and available, they're going to start. Same with Rodri. I think Sterling's probably an 8, borderline 9 out of 10 in terms of number of games in a row player. Ederson's going to be 10 out of 10. He's the only kind of solid one. But I think Gundogan and De Bruyne should play pretty much every game, week in, week out in the Premier League until pretty much mathematically they have the league sorted, and then they can focus solely on the Champions League. So if by the time, game week 30-ish rolls around, there's 8 games left in the league and City's got a 15, point lead, over second place in the Premier League, they could pretty much field a second string team and still be fine on the easier fixtures and still be okay, and still have the kind of the big guns like Aguero, like De Bruyne, like Gundogan, like Bernardo Silva. They have so many good players. They could literally field a second string team and probably get top 4 in the Premier League. That's how good their team is and how deep it is. And I think it all stems from the fact that they went and bought the one position that they really needed, a leader at the back to kind of follow in the footsteps of Vincent Kompany, and they've done with Ruben Diaz. He's only 23 years old, and he's done quite well for them, keeping, I think it's like out of the 15 or so games that him and Stones have partnered together, they've only not kept a clean sheet like once or twice, which is crazy to think of. So yeah, they're doing quite well. Now let's take a look at the first player on our list that is going to be important for Pep Guardiola in this coming game week. And that first and most important player is Kevin De Bruyne, arguably City's best player when fully fit and fully active and in full flow. He is now back from injury. Didn't get any minutes in the Champions League, but like I said, got the 60-odd minutes versus Arsenal, which is good to see. He's probably going to start versus West Ham. He's probably going to start versus Wolves. He may get 60 to 70 minutes in both of those games, and then he'll probably, if he has to, or almost certainly will, play the full 90 versus Manchester United, because if they were to beat United, then the league's pretty much done. They're already 10 points ahead. If United were to drop more points to Chelsea, let's say, because they do have them next, or even Crystal Palace before that Manchester City game, you could be looking at a situation where City then go 12 points clear, and then if they beat United, that's 15 points clear, and then you're looking at, 27, 28, 29 games played. You're looking at that 30-game mark where there's only 8 games left with that 15-point buffer, and it would take a monumental slip-up in order for City to drop out. But I think De Bruyne is one of those players that will play pretty much week in, week out. Glad to see him back in the Premier League. Personally, I'm a big advocate of his. I really like the way he plays, and you want to see the best players playing in the Premier League, whether it's against your team or not. And he's also a great fantasy asset as well, which is why I included him in my Gameweek 25 wildcard team. Is it likely that he gets substituted pre-90 minutes in the West Ham and Wolves game? Almost certainly. Especially if they go 2-0 up in either game, probably. Maybe he gets hooked at 65, 70 minutes. That's pretty much any City player that can happen to. But De Bruyne, since he's come back from injury, it's possible that could happen. I would also, possibly think that could happen to other players as well who've been playing a lot of minutes as well. So, and De Bruyne is no exception to that rule, even though he basically is, when Fernandinho is not on the pitch, the captain on the pitch. He's also going to be back on penalties almost certainly, which is another thing we kind of forgot about. De Bruyne is actually decent at penalties. He missed one, which was against Liverpool, but otherwise than that, should be able to hit the mark from 12 yards out. And I would expect him to be back on penalties, assuming Aguero isn't on the pitch, because they haven't gotten a penalty since, because Aguero hasn't been back and gotten a penalty when him and Aguero have been on the field since it's gone to De Bruyne. So that'd be interesting to see when that does transpire. But let's take a look at the second player we have on our list to take a look at for Game Week 26. And that second player is Sergio Aguero, somebody who's been out of the team for quite a while now. Suffered a serious injury in the middle of last summer. When the Premier League was still going on, and has been out pretty much since then. Came back for a little bit, had kind of a relapse in terms of that injury, and then contracted COVID-19, so then had to self-isolate. So he's kind of slowly being bedded in back to the team. Jesus has kind of been in and out of the team as well. His place hasn't been assured. And City have looked their best this season when playing kind of that false nine, kind of 6 midfielder role. One of those midfielders being Rodri. And then kind of using Cancelo as a creative force and kind of playing a system very similar to Bielsa's Leeds 3-1-3-3 at times. And Aguero, 10.3 million, so he's way cheaper than Harry Kane and a similar price to Vardy at the moment. If he starts getting a regular string of games, could be in our thoughts fantasy-wise. We'll probably take penalties off De Bruyne, although that's not 100% certain, but we know what Aguero can do on his day. Just have to see if he's, fully fit and back to the old Aguero from what we know, because as we know, serious injuries that can leave you out longer term, especially combined with, getting up in age. I think he's 32 now. He's definitely into his 30s by a year or two. So that paired with the serious injuries that keep to be reoccurring over and over and over again over the last season or two could be a bit of a problem for him. We'll still wait for that judgment and see how he does. He did get 10 minutes and kind of was buzzing around a little bit in the Champions League game. Whether he gets more minutes in the West Ham game, I would assume he's probably going to get 20 or so minutes in the West Ham game. Maybe he gets 30 minutes or potentially a 60-minute start in the Wolves game, and then he's raring to go for the United game. That would probably be what Pep's plan is probably going to be, and we'll have to see kind of how that goes. But yeah, Aguero should definitely be back on our thoughts. Probably not immediately, and City's fixture is kind of, are good. Maybe he's an option for the double game week in 27 versus Man United as well. But we'll have to kind of see on that. Gundogan's kind of a staple in our teams. Has done well when De Bruyne has been in the team. De Bruyne has obviously been a good fantasy asset in the past. Diaz is just a solid defensive pick, and Cancelo's been quite good creative-wise. And yeah, they've all been pretty stable picks throughout the season so far. So be a bit interesting to kind of fit him into our teams. Forward slots have been pretty hit or miss this season, but it'd be quite interesting to shake things up if Aguero came back and started playing game in, game out, and scoring goals up front for Manchester City. Now, let's take a look at the last player that we've chosen for this week who's been seeing quite a lot of minutes and is maybe going a little bit on the radar for Pep Guardiola's Man City. And that player is Bernardo Silva. I believe the world number one still has him in his team, and he's been slowly ticking along with the points. 5 points versus Liverpool, 2 versus Spurs, 13 versus Everton, 2 versus Arsenal. So overall, if I do the math really quickly, that's what, 22 points. Divide that by 4. You're kind of looking at around an average of 5 points a game. And for 7.4 million, that's not too bad. Maybe a little bit under. Maybe you're probably looking for a little bit more. But nonetheless, he is playing the minutes that we want to see from somebody in that price bracket. 90 minutes in the last 4 game week fixtures. And is kind of a bit of a versatile player for Pep. Can play out wide right, wide left, in the midfield 3, false 9. He's been kind of chucked all over the place. And it's somebody who can be that kind of, innovative player. Somebody who, can get in and around the box, as shown by his goal that he scored versus Gladbach. Pretty easy header to do, but it was a late run into the box, which allowed for him to get in behind the defense and put home João Cancelo's very good cross. And it was a pretty straightforward, pretty easy to put in, but with that kind of delivery, you just have to make the run and then the goal is going to be there for you. And I think Pep likes that in players who are working hard, getting in and around the box, making the runs, providing for teammates, kind of supplementing runs that allow space for others. And Bernardo Silva's definitely been doing that. About a season ago, wasn't doing all that hot, if was hardly in and around the team due to just terrible form, but he's now seemed to have picked that back up, and hence why he is being put in the lineup game in and game out, playing 90 minutes after 90 minutes after 90 minutes, and is kind of taken over the kind of utility man type of role in the team so far. And with that flexibility, he can potentially play in a bunch of different roles. Does that mean he's necessarily going to be as potent as the likes of a Gundogan, or as consistent in terms of FPL points the likes of Diaz, or maybe Cancelo or somebody like that? We'll still have to see, but I still think he's ticking along quite nicely. If you're looking for that mid-priced midfielder in the 7 million-ish bracket, Bernardo Silva might be the guy to go for, and it's a massive differential, and I put him in my differential picks a few times over this season, and he's done decently well. So I would say he's definitely a guy to look out for, especially over the double game week if you're looking for a bit of a differential. But now let's take a look at what I think Pep Guardiola is going to go with in game week 26. So this is the lineup that I think that Pep Guardiola is going to go with, at least for his game versus West Ham in double game week 26, which is the first of the 2 games, the second one being versus Wolves at home. So I think he's going to go with the same back 5, so Ederson, Cancelo, Stones, Diaz, and Zinchenko. I think there's no real reason to change that up. He kind of changed it up a little bit in the Champions League game, putting in Walker. I think Cancelo you kind of need versus West Ham to kind of play the balls in behind their kind of very sturdy midfield, so I think he should maintain his place. Zinchenko out on the left, I think is going to basically pick up the place that Cancelo is going to be leaving in that void due to Walker dropping to the bench. Midfield, pretty much the same as before. Bernardo, the man in form. Gundogan's been arguably their player of the season, and Rodri just stable in midfield. I think Foden comes in instead from the team sheet versus Arsenal. I think that he plays over the likes of Riyad Mahrez. I think De Bruyne comes in, having not played versus Gladbach, and I think Sterling maintains his place after coming off after 60 or so minutes versus Gladbach as well. And I think some of the key players could be Jesus, Mahrez, and Aguero. And I think this kind of 6 midfielder with 1 DM kind of system that Pep Guardiola is running with is doing quite well, especially against teams that like to park the bus and kind of play those two banks of four. West Ham and Wolves will do both of those things, and it was quite effective versus Arsenal as well, who kind of sat in a little bit, and they pretty much had nothing really going on for them, and City were able to control the game. In terms of how he could change it going into the Wolves game, I think if he does hypothetically go with this team, I would see Mahrez replace Foden out on the right-hand side, maybe either Sterling on the left-hand side, and then they swap flanks. I could see Jesus or Aguero getting 20 to 30 minutes off the bench, maybe both, and then one of them starting versus Wolves. I would like to see Aguero just to see if he still got it. And then Cancelo might get dropped for the Wolves game, with Zinchenko maintaining his place out at left back and Walker coming in. He just doesn't seem to be picking Mendy, and it's almost like Cancelo and Walker are the right backs and Cancelo and Zinchenko are the left backs, which is a bit weird. He could also potentially play Laporte in the second game versus Wolves instead of Zinchenko, and then play Walker, and then use Walker as kind of like the attacking fullback, although he doesn't really play that role as well in terms of creativity. He's got good pace and kind of cross the ball, but there's like kind of inside kind of passes, the little dinked passes in there that kind of Cancelo did for the first goal that they scored versus Gladbach for Bernardo Silva's goal. I don't think Walker really has that, so I don't really see a system where it's going to be Stones, Diaz, Laporte, and then Cancelo. I don't really see how that could potentially work. Cancelo's kind of the straw that stirs the drink, as it were, kind of the one that makes it all work. So yeah, this would be my team that I think Pep Guardiola is going to choose based off the selections that he chose in midweek. And then if he does play this team, I would see Cancelo potentially going to the bench, with Zinchenko maintaining his place and Walker coming in for Cancelo. Bernardo Silva maybe gets dropped for the likes of Riyad Mahrez, maybe with De Bruyne moving back into the midfield three, and then Jesus or Aguero maybe starts instead, making it more of a normal midfield three, and then you have maybe Foden switching over to the left for Sterling maybe, or Sterling gets plays and Mahrez plays on the right. One of those two things will probably be the situation that Pep kind of goes with overall. But I think when Man City are playing their best against teams that have a low block, which West Ham and Wolves do, Pep likes to play this midfield kind of system and bring on the strikers a little bit later. So I think he may favor that. But I would like to see kind of a different dynamic. Maybe Aguero comes in and kind of shows his form of old, which could make us have a little bit of consideration for him going into their double game week in 27. And that is going to do it for our double game week 26 edition of Pep Roulette. If you haven't done so already, make sure to leave a like on the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new, and turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. And give us a follow over on Twitter so you can keep it up to date with all the content coming out on all the social media platforms, as well as give us a follow over on Twitch so that you can see when we go live for our FPL streams, which we will be doing one for the double game week 26 deadline. That's going to be 1 hour before the deadline at 5 a.m. EST start time. There'll be a pinned comment down below as to where you can find us, as well as at what time we will be starting for that. So make sure to come check us out over on the live stream for the Double Game Week 26 deadline stream. Thanks for watching, and until the next one, take care.